Hey, welcome back to Aircraft Adventures. I'm Liam Locke, and we are back in a flight simulator, but we are not back in the Microsoft Flight Simulator. I recently upgraded, if you will, to X-Plane 11. And I gotta admit, I held off on getting X-Plane 11 because I read just a couple of reviews that suggested that, it wasn't all that. And I had invested a fair amount of resources into FSX. I liked the simulator, but there in the end, I just wasn't getting enough realism from the environment, from the airports, from some of the other services, and I wanted to just check out X-Plane 11, so I did. And wow, am I really happy that I checked it out, because I have been blown away by a number of things. Now, I'll say right up front that it is not perfect at all, but it's good. I kind of made a list here, some things I just wanted to touch on real quick before we get started with this flight. So, first and foremost, right, the realism at the airport is incredible. Why? Because in X-Plane 11, we've got this updated graphics engine designed for today's video cards, today's CPUs, 64-bit architecture in the flight simulator, which is great. We don't get that in the current FSX. The flight model is improved for the aircraft, a little more realistic than what you get out of FSX. But for me, I wanted that realism of the environment. So flying into an airport and having all these different 3D models representing actual real-world airports that are, for the most part, recognizable, I think is just an incredible touch. Now, I know everyone's excited about the new Flight Simulator 2020 coming out here soon, and I am too. I'm looking forward to getting it. And I've been doing the Microsoft Flight Simulator for a long time. I really like the product, and I kind of felt guilty actually about even going to X-Plane. It's kind of like you're cheating on your simulator a little bit, trying out this new simulator. But I'm so glad that I did, for all these additional features that have come to light. I mean, I love the realism of the environment, above and beyond what I'm getting from actually flying the plane. Let me talk about some of the other things that I like about X-Plane 11. So, lots of add-ons. They've got an organizational, a website dedicated to community-developed add-ons, and I'm talking some actual, really high-quality stuff that you can add into your simulator to continue to expand and build upon that realism of the environment beyond just flying the general aviation aircraft or the jetliners that are available. So I really like that product. Obviously, there's payware as well. The plane, well, not this plane, but I've picked up one of the payware planes, the 747, and we'll talk about that another time in another video. But today we're flying actually one of the freeware planes, the Zibo 737-800 modded aircraft. A really, really well done aircraft. I'm quite impressed with it. Now, before I start talking about that, I don't want to get sidetracked here, so I want to go back to just a couple more things about the pros of X-Plane 11. And that is some of the additional touches that they add on to the aircraft. Things like heat coming from the engine, ice buildup on the wings, the interior modeling that they put into these aircraft. Right, nothing like that have I experienced in FSX. And you'll see that during this flight. We'll take a look inside the cabin of the plane, and you can see that the interior is modeled just as well as the cockpit, which is really cool. I also love the realism of the airport. So I've said this a couple times already, but now I want to explain why. So we're at an airport, and you're used to this scene, right? In FSX, we've got a static airport. We're sitting at a static gate. And gates connected to the aircraft, and it's just us. It's just one plane on the tarmac, nobody else around. I mean, yes, you could turn on some other aircraft, but it really affects the performance of FSX with its limited memory capability. X-Plane 11, we can have static aircraft, or we can have actual traffic. There's an add-on that you can get to have traffic moving about at the airport, right? Planes taking off and landing. As well as there's just a lot of general ground activity. So let me change my view here and let's just go up and take a look. Check this out. We are at an airport, and it looks like an actual airport. I'll zoom down here a little bit. Planes sitting at the gate. You got cars and catering trucks and gas and fuel trucks, you know, running around the airport, fueling up planes. The airport looks really impressive, high quality airport. We can go a little further up here. Right, this airport is large. We are sitting at Logan International Airport in Massachusetts, so Boston. Take a look around here. Absolutely incredible. Over there you have the Boston Skyline in the background. I think that is incredible. All the moving traffic at the airport, just what a great touch. It looks like an operational airport. You feel like you're actually in this scenario here at the airport, getting ready to take off with a bunch of other planes at the airport. And we're going to have global traffic as well, so we're going to have planes landing and taking off. You'll hear engines starting up the gate. Planes will taxi to the runway. So this is just a level of realism that wasn't possible in FSX. At least I could never get that level of experience. So those are the pros. So with the pros, I got to talk just briefly about the cons. I might have to make this a two-part video with all the talking I'm doing about this particular simulator, but there are cons. So one thing that FSX clearly does better than X-Plane 11 is ground services. And it's not so much that FSX does it better, it's that the add-on GSX for FSX, which is the ground services add-on, is far superior as far as quality and interaction of the ground fuel trucks, the catering vehicles, the loading and offloading of cargo, and the boarding of passengers. All of this is so much more realistic in FSX because of that GSX add-on. GSX is not available for X-Plane. There is a ground services add-on for X-Plane, which is payware. However, it doesn't offer the same level of quality. It's got some pretty capable features in its own respect, but interaction with the aircraft is a little bit limited. The pathing that the vehicles take is kind of regimented. They're set up directly behind the aircraft when they appear and they go to the aircraft, and I don't know, it's just not as clean. You don't have the interaction of the people getting on board the plane or interacting with the cargo movers, so a little bit of that is lost. I'm just not as thrilled with ground services. Fortunately, you know, flying around in X-Plane or any flight simulator is not about ground services, but it just takes a little bit away from the realism at the airport. And I may show you a little bit of that here as we get this plane started for our flight today. The other things that I have on my list for cons is the jetway modeling is not near as polished as what you can get in FSX. They've got many other varieties of jetways that look a little cleaner. The texture and modeling is a little bit stronger. The operation of the jetways as far as connecting up to the aircraft is in my opinion, better in FSX than it is currently offered inside of X-Plane. So I'm not a fan of that. I also surprisingly find that X-Plane's ability to identify the gates, right, just by their size, what aircraft should be at what gate, when you're looking at the airport layout in the native X-Plane interface, it shows you the gates, but it tells you nothing about the gates. I don't know if it's for a heavy aircraft, right, a large jumbo jetliner, if it's for a medium 737, or if it's just a ramp or general aviation parking spot. It tells you nothing whatsoever. So you kind of need to know that up front or do some preliminary checking before you decide to pick a gate and put a giant 747 at the gate, because the size doesn't seem to matter. Whatever it's configured for, you can put a 747 at that gate and it'll dwarf or be practically touching the planes around it if there are aircraft in close proximity to that plane. So not a fan of that. X-Plane 11, so my interpretation, I'm brand new to it, and maybe I'm totally off base here, but it seems more geared towards general aviation aircraft and not so much jetliners. Seems like that was added in because there's clearly some desire for that. I have a desire for that. So working with the jetliners, they're not near as polished. Now, I would expect that from freeware jetliners, but I wouldn't expect that from the payware jetliners. There is a clear difference in the modeling and the texture applied to these aircraft in the payware than what you get from the payware aircraft for FSX. So they're definitely not on the level of PMDG, which is a lot of the aircraft that I've flown in FSX. High quality, highly modeled, all the systems are set up. On the X-Plane side, most of the systems are modeled, but just the look and feel and interaction with the buttons is just not quite as polished, not quite as simulated as you would like, right? If I could get the PMDG aircraft in X-Plane, I think that would be fantastic because it would just be perfect. But we're not quite there yet, in my opinion. I also think that, like in FSX, the air traffic control in X-Plane is bad. Or just say bad. I don't want to say it's horrendous. It's pretty bad. Honestly, I'd probably have to say it's probably worse than FSX. I mean, at least I could manage to fly a plane, even though it didn't recognize SIDS and stars, and get myself down to a runway without too much trouble. The first time I tried air traffic control in X-Plane, it was not a good experience at all. And it's not flexible whatsoever. I also don't like that when you land at your destination airport, you know, in FSX, I can contact ground control and I can just request a gate, right? I don't have to have a flight plan filed to go to that airport in order to line up a gate. In X-Plane, I don't have that option, right? I can't contact ground control and request an open gate. So again, I need to know the destination airport. I need to kind of have a gate in mind that I'm going to be going to when I arrive there. You know, just a little bit of additional work you have to do in advance of hopping in the plane and taking a trip somewhere. The last thing I'll say that is a con inside of X-Plane 11, cloud transitions, not good. I was going to say horrible, just not good. Not good because, you know, they look good the way they are right now. These are the native X-Plane 11 clouds in the sky. And I've got real-world weather similar to what I had in FSX using Active Sky, which is a great product, great add-on for the simulator. But there is no fading or transition between different weather settings. So if I'm flying the plane and I move from one set of weather data to another, where the cloud layers are going to change or the clouds are going to change style, X-Plane literally clears the sky and then redraws the clouds for the new weather information. Which, again, it's just like, really, we can't. Been doing this long and we can't figure out how to do cloud transitions. So I'm not a fan of that either. But all of those things said, I'm still going to say X-Plane 11 is pretty awesome, just for the realism of flight, the realism of the environment, the airport, the buildings that you can see as you come in for a landing, the ground activity at the airport, the planes at the airport, the air traffic, the airplanes taking off and landing that you're going to be flying in and around and taxiing to runways. All of that makes up for some of the shortcomings. So I'm excited for what the future holds, and I'm excited for FS 2020 as well. That's going to bring a whole different level of flight simulation, but I get to sample some of that now, right, by getting into X-Plane 11. So I'm really excited about that, and that's what we're going to do. So that's kind of my my unexpected lengthy discussion on what I like about this new simulator. So let me stop talking here Alright, so for today's flight, we are flying in the Zibo 737-800 modded aircraft. This is actually freeware inside of X-Plane, impressively enough. And we've got our custom United livery configured on the aircraft with the Star Wars logo. So on one side we have the Rebels and the blue colored lightsaber, and on the other side, right, we have the Empire with the red lightsaber and the red coloring showing the TIE fighters. Very nice. We're going to go ahead and hop in aircraft and get things started up. Now, one thing I should add it to my con list about X-Plane 11 is the knucklehead sitting here in front of us is our marshaller, and I don't know why he's there, right? I don't need him right now, and he's just going to hang out there the whole time. And I have not found a way to turn him off, but I would kind of like him to go away. I would like for him to be there when we pull into the gate, but I really don't need him to be hanging out there right now. He's got his beady little eyes on me. It's making me nervous, actually. Okay, so cold and dark startup, 737, slightly different. I think I've got my checklist here. We're going to work through this process. Some cool features. Now, even though this is freeware, I gotta say, this is probably one of the most polished aircraft so far that I've flown from the jetliner category in X-Plane. And now, admittedly, I haven't seen a whole lot of them yet, but if I'm comparing to my experience in FSX and those planes, this one is really, really, really close, and actually has some features that don't exist in FSX, and you're going to get to experience some of those as we start up here. One of the first things we want to do is we've got this handy little electronic flight bag over here on the left, so we can start to control aspects of the aircraft. We want to go right to ground services. We do have some settings that we can control from the flight bag, so we want to make sure we set the chocks. So we're going to go ahead and set the chocks right now. And then with the chocks in place, the gate outside is already connected to the aircraft. That occurred automatically because I've added some additional plugins that allow the static jetways to come to life and actually connect up to the aircraft. So that's working. We don't even have to control that. That's completely automatic. Now we want to go to overhead console, and we'll go ahead and get this plane started up. So we'll activate our battery here. I'll start bringing the plane to life. Now notice that we don't have any ground power yet. This varies by airport and the gate as to whether or not you get an automatic connection to ground power. So in this case, I don't have ground power. We need to go back and to the electronic flight bag and ask for a ground power unit. So we'll do that. With that connected, we now have ground power available to us. So we'll get that started up. We're on board the aircraft. We want to get one of the doors open so passengers can board, right? Just playing into the realism of what's going on. So we do have door control down here on the electronic flight bag. Forward entry, we're going to go ahead and open that up. We'll get our forward cargo and aft cargo opened up as well. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. Some really interesting, I think, good quality, you know, good immersion factor of the sounds of the doors actually unlocking and opening and the cargo doors opening. Really cool. I do like that. Let's take a look at the temperature in the plane. So it is definitely getting a little warm there in the aircraft. 30 degrees Celsius. Definitely pushing up there. What is that? That's it's probably pushing up around 80 degrees, over 80 degrees. So we want to cool the aircraft off. So we will go back and we can request an air unit as well. So we'll go ahead and get that connected. Now that makes a lot of noise, unfortunately. Might take a little bit away from hearing some of the other startup features of the aircraft. So let's just see how that goes. Hopefully that's going to start. Ooh, that's getting really loud, isn't it? Oh, that's actually a plane going by. Hopefully that's not too loud. You can still hear me okay. So we've got battery selector on. We want to go up here to our DC AC panel and go ahead and change this over to battery. See that we've got 29 volts, which is good. And what I typically do is I turn this to whatever power source I expect to be using. So we're on ground power. We can see that we do have ground power, which is what we expect to see. Our in-flight entertainment and our cab utilities are both in the on position, so we'll leave them there. We want to go over here and turn on our electric hydraulic pumps, get those going. Confirm that our landing gear lever is down, and you can see over here landing gear lever is down. Up here is our hydraulic pressure, so we are in the green range, which is good. That's what we expect. Let me just zoom up because I've got this new thing in my my stream here. You notice the status bar at the top is brand new, and I have to remember that that's there. Position my screen so you can see what I'm looking at. But here, our brake pressure is good. Hydraulic pressure is good. With us being in the cockpit and getting things going up, we want to go up to our position light here in the 737 and put it to steady. And that turns on our navigation lights outside. In this particular aircraft, we also have the ability to control lighting inside the aircraft. Now, I told you that the interior of these aircrafts are actually modeled, which is super cool. So cabin lighting, passenger area, I can set the mood or the state of my flight and what lights should be on inside the passenger cabin, as well as the entry area. So right now, it's white and bright. And what does that mean? Well, if we look out in the cabin, check this out. Is this not freaking awesome? It's really cool. I mean, the fact that you can be back in the plane, and X-Plane even allows you, you know, this mod even allows you to model people sitting in the seats. Now, I think that's taking it too far, because it's always the same people in the same position, and I think that would get old quick. So I don't have them turned on, but I love the fact that the interior of the plane is modeled. And when I say modeled, it's not just this section, right? I mean, you can back up here and actually see more of the aircraft is actually modeled. Now, I'm trying to do this manually because I don't have a camera automatically set for it, but if I back up here, right, look at that. Here you can see in the galley, right, Cokes and drinks modeled, you know, in the galley area. Here's the door where the passengers will be coming in from the gate. This is crazy. Here's the service door. I'm blown away by this. It's just one of those little touches that are so minor but make such a difference in the experience. I really like that. Very cool. So we're not going to mess with the cabin lighting. We're good with that. What we do want to do now, if we look outside, I talked about ground services just briefly. Now, I love all the ground traffic, right, and all the miscellaneous things scattered about on the ground by the airplane, right? All of these luggage carts here is a really kind of cool touch. And these baggage loaders, but these are static objects. For the most part, they don't move. So they kind of get in the way, right? If I wanted to use ground services, how would ground services navigate around this gear? They don't. They basically run right through it, which takes a little bit away from the realism, unfortunately. But I said there is ground services, not as good as GSX, but there is ground services in X-Plane, so we're going to go ahead and call some of that right now. And I want to create an illusion for you, and then I'll expose the illusion here in a moment. So I'm trying to zoom in on the aircraft, and I'm going to go up here and call ground services. So we'll go to ground handling, and I'm going to manually control. First, I'm going to activate this little control widget, which for whatever reason initializes the gear, the ground services equipment that's related to this aircraft, and it's a little bit slow. So this is not a great add-on. I wished it was a little bit faster. But here's ideally the gear that could be positioned around this particular aircraft, and it aligns with the aircraft that we're flying in today. We're not going to use this though. I just wanted to activate that aircraft, and I'm going to manually control what I want. So what I want is a catering truck, and I can't get a catering truck up here cleanly to the front of the aircraft, but I can put one here to the back of the aircraft. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to call for a catering truck. Now GSX and FSX, it kind of navigates from somewhere else around the airport. You don't really see where it comes from, and it's usually a ways away from the airplane. With this ground handling, what's it called again? Well, yeah, with the ground handling deluxe, it is different. The vehicle kind of appears really close to the aircraft, and that's what I meant about the illusion that I'm going to reveal for you here in a minute. But here comes our catering truck up to the aircraft. So it looks like he's running a little slow right now. We've got a lot of stuff going on in the simulator, and I do have the quality bumped up a little bit, so my frame rate might be dropping there a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't linger. But he's going to get situated to the aircraft, so this is good. This is similar to GSX. Looks good from that angle and that vantage point. We can now go in and actually open up the rear door for this vehicle. So we'll jump back in. Right, and we'll go back to our doors. And we'll do the aft service. Go back out and take a look at that, and now you can see there the aft door just opened up. Now there are no people, there's no animation, there's no truck that's going to start loading up the aircraft, but the one thing we do have, slightly different immersion factor going back inside the airplane, is if we want the illusion from inside the cockpit that this activity has taken place, we do have the ability to turn on sound effects. So we've got the start service crews on the ground. And this is going to, listen for it. So you can hear the galleyway doors being opened and closed as if the food and beverage carts were being stocked onto the aircraft. You can hear the spraying going on in the background as if they're cleaning seats. You know, with the pandemic going on, I'm sure that is a very routine thing taking place now between flights. So, cool little feature. We're going to let that run for a little bit while we continue with our startup process. And I'm going to come back to the illusion. I'm just not going to reveal it quite yet. So we've got that going on. We need to get our plane ready to fly. So we need to go to fuel and check out our fuel payload. Looks like right now 11.3 tons of fuel on board. And we need to check out our flight plan. So if we look here at the flight plan, now the flight plan is actually for a different branded aircraft. Just ignore that for right now. But this is the flight plan we're going to fly today. And required fuel to get down to Dallas-Fort Worth, 14.3 tons of fuel, 14,325 kilograms. So we do need to make a change here, and that's easy enough. We're just going to drop in that number, 14,325. And now we have a difference, so we'll need to put on some fuel. Then we can go back and look at our flight plan and take a look at our payload. Scroll further down here. So payload today, 19.2. What I'm trying to get to is close to this zero fuel weight. So in FSX, we would just plug in the zero fuel weight and let it auto-distribute passengers. We do something similar to that here in X-Plane, but not quite exactly the same. So I need to go and put payload, and when I click on payload, it takes me to this actual load, and I can actually identify, if I wanted, right, the number of male, female passengers, kids who are on board the aircraft to make up my payload. But we want to make this as quick as possible. We'll get down to the bottom, payload total, and I want to put in 19.2, but 19.2 is heavy. This is just based on some of my testing. So I typically take about half a ton off of this number. So we'll do 18.7. That's going to auto load our plane with passengers. We'll go back here, go back to payload. Now I can see that my zero fuel weight is 61,811. And if we look at the flight plan, and I keep forgetting I'm not going back to the aircraft to show you this, and I'll show you it in just a moment. Our zero fuel weight estimated, right, was 60,878. We're actually at 61,811, so we're close. You know, we're about a ton off, but we're going to go ahead and stick with this. We can make this work for our purposes. So let me go back to the main. So here we are at the main. You can see now a little larger detail the payload that we selected on. And when we click on that, it takes us out here to this payload screen where we can actually designate passengers, or we can just put in the payload total. Now we do need to call for a fuel truck, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But before I call the fuel truck, we need to get rid of catering. So plane is clean. At least that's what we're going to go with. We're going to go ahead and stop the ground services. We're going to go ahead and get that door closed as well. Ground services doors. We'll get the app service door closed up. Now here's where we're going to reveal the illusion. So we'll go back outside, and I want to zoom back in here just a little bit. So we're going to dismiss the catering truck. Good animation, right? Similar to GSX. Pretty quality graphics. I'm happy with that. I wish there was just a hair more. But I love the lights going on around the truck. That's a nice touch that doesn't exist in GSX. So our catering truck is going to back away and act as if it's departing the aircraft, which is great. That's what we want. God, he's moving awfully slow too. Speed that up a little bit. So he's gone, but where is he going actually, right? We want him to just kind of drive away somewhere around the airport and basically vanish. But that's not what's taking place, unfortunately. He is coming out behind the aircraft back to his starting position. And when we spawn him to come to the aircraft, that catering truck as well as any of these other vehicles will all spawn at the back of the aircraft and kind of a line here at the back. And that's where they all originate from to actually come and service the aircraft. So that's the illusion busted, right? Unlike in GSX where they come from some far region of the airport and you don't really know where they drive off to. That's a better immersion factor than what you get here with ground handling. But there is some advanced control in ground handling. I can actually set markers further away from the aircraft to create that illusion, but I don't have to do that in GSX, right? And that's a fair amount of work to do within this ground handling add-on. So that's enough about that. I just wanted to show you my criticism there of ground handling. I'm sure they're working on it. I look forward to an update from that product. Maybe someday it'll be on the same level as a GSX. Oh, and I should have gotten rid of it. Right, here's the other break the illusion. So in control, once it's activated, we can say bye-bye and vanish. Poof, it's gone, just like magic. So let's press on with our startup. So we've got our fuel situated, and we said we we're going to call for the fuel truck. Back to payload. Oh, I went too far. Go back. And now we call the fuel truck, right? Boom! More magic going on the ground. Unlike in GSX where the fuel truck is going to come after a certain period of time and hook up to the aircraft. Lo and behold, if we go back outside, oh my god, he got here so fast. I just requested fuel. He's already here, right? Cool little static dude pumping fuel into the plane. You know, I like that. Let's actually take control of the camera and zoom in here. Right, it's interesting. So the line is falling under the road here a little bit, but there's supposed to be a pipe there coming from the truck, so that's kind of cool. It is connected to the aircraft somewhat realistically, I like. He's just going to hang out there and wait while the fuel gets pumped onto the plane. So, I mean, visually, that's decent. It's not horrible, but, you know, it appears out of nowhere. Back up here. Oh, I'm going forward. Let's turn around here. And notice also, yeah, the fuel truck is parked inside the cargo loader, the baggage loader. Not ideal, but that's what it is. So I wish we had a little more control over that. I would definitely like that a little bit better. Alright, enough about that. Back inside here, pressing on. So now we get into our normal startup procedures, right? So we'll go down here to the center console and start running through our checks. Take a look here at our fire overheat detection switches. So we'll put it in test mode there, make sure the lights come on. Make sure our engine fire, APU fire come on. Check our fire extinguisher system, make sure that it's good. Good to go. Check our cargo. Looks good. You can hear there in the background another aircraft is starting up, so if they're close by, those jet engines make a lot of noise. So the airport is busy, right? Planes are coming and going on a schedule, and we will come back to that thought. Alright, so we're good to go there. Now, optionally, we could start the APU at this point. We're not going to do that. We'll hold off just a little bit longer. The plane is still actually pretty hot. So if we're going to get passengers boarding, we'll go ahead and get the APU started up. It's going to burn through a little bit of our fuel, but we'll go ahead and start it up now. That'll allow us to disconnect that air handler outside, which is also making a lot of noise for us. So get the on position down here to the start. We'll get this APU cranking up. And we'll give it a chance to start, and while that is starting up, we can switch to APU generator. We see that we've got no power right now, and once it comes online, we'll see that we've got some AC volts available to us. So our exhaust gas temperature is coming back down. Should have power here momentarily. And there comes our indication, right? Our indication that the APU generator is available. And if we look up, we can see that we do have AC volts available to us. So we want to go ahead and we're going to switch over to the APU for right now. APU is running. We'll go up here to our air control and go ahead and turn on the Apu Bleed, get air circulating, and go ahead and get our pack started so we can start controlling the temperature inside the aircraft. That should cool us down here a little bit. And with that in place, we scan back here to ground power. All right, we have ground power, but we're not using any of it. We are using 66.7 amps on the APU generator. That is good to go. So we're on APU power. I want to disconnect the air handler and the ground power unit. Services. Disconnect the air handler. Disconnect the GPU. Just spot check our flap lever. So flaps are up. Verify that the gauge indicates the same. It does. Flaps are retracted. Flight recorder way up high here. Flight recorder. We'll just make sure this light goes out, so that's good to go. Check our warnings, make sure those systems are operational. Alright. Make sure that reverser lights are not engaged. They're not. Electronic engine controls are on, which is what we expect. Passenger oxygen, crew oxygen, normal, looks good. Gear is good. No interior lights currently turned on right now. Go up here to our inertial reference system. I'm going to change this over to heading status because we're getting ready to turn it on. So on the left IRS, we'll go to align. Wait for our DC light to go out, and then go to nav. Same on the right. Okay, go to nav. We'll let that start up. Everything else over here is good. Flaps information. Our PSEU light is good. GPS light wasn't illuminated, so we're all fine here. PSEU was the proximity switch electronic unit, and the ELT I don't have noted here, which is surprising. Parking brake should have been set, so parking brake is down here. You can see that the light is illuminated, so our parking brake is set. Just to make that a little easier to see, if we look up here, you can see parking brake full. That stuff looks good. At this point, we might do our light test. Right, so activate all the lights, make sure everything is illuminated and working as expected, which, you know, this is a thing in a real aircraft, not so much a thing in the simulator, because I'm certainly not going to be popping out any light bulbs and replacing any lights in the switches, but nonetheless an item on our checklist just to kind of to do. Oxygen mask test. So basically I'm just showing that a lot of the same things that we were doing in the professional PMDG quality modeled aircraft, it's possible for us to do that here in this freeware Zevo modded 737-800. So a lot of hard quality work put into this aircraft. I am quite impressed with this aircraft considering that I didn't pay any money for it. And on the FSX side, yeah, I paid a chunk of change for that PMDG aircraft. Alright, going up to the airfreight console, basically scanning down here, right? All of our guards are closed up here in the top. Guards are all closed. Yaw damper on. Navigation, these are normal, FMC normal, source auto's correct, normal's correct, fuel temperature, okay, cross bleed is currently closed, correct. We can go ahead and turn our fuel pumps on. We've got our looking at our power, AC/DC set up correctly, looking at our APU currently, standby power, guard is closed, drive guards are closed, no longer on ground power, we're running on the APU. Engines are off, so we don't have any engine generator power yet. Lights are situated okay. We're going to go ahead and turn our panel lights, both our floods and our rear lit lights, get those turned on. Equipment cooling in the normal position. Go ahead and get our emergency lights armed. And we'll leave the seatbelt sign alone for the moment. Typically I would turn that on, but I want to show you some other stuff related to sound in the aircraft, so we'll come back to that. Go ahead and get our window heat active. We don't turn on the probes yet, no anti-ice or wing anti-ice yet. Electric pumps are already on. The pressurization, cabin pressurization is good to go. Temperature has come down in the cabin, so it is now ready for passengers to board at a comfortable 24 degrees Celsius. So what is that, about 75? 24 is what, 75.2? So happy with that. No changes here. Cruising altitude today is, let me back up here. It's going to be 34,000. We'll go ahead and just drop that in now since we're here. 34,000. I don't have the landing altitude quite yet. Then no other changes up here. We're going to go down to captain's seat. Right, nose wheel steering. Now one thing that's kind of odd in FSX, admittedly, I think I was playing at a different resolution. I was playing at 4K, which put a little more detail on the screen. I'm not doing that here in X-Plane because it's not quite, with everything I've got going on, I don't get quite the same frame rate. So to give a better frame rate, I'm playing at a slightly lower resolution. So it makes the panels look a little blurry depending on how far you are away from them. Yet the panels in this aircraft are actually 4K texture, so they're really quite crisp. And if I zoom in just a little bit, you can see that the detail is really strong, very strong, right? Little nameplate that looks realistic, so I like it. It's definitely quality textures. We're looking at our settings here, so nose wheel steering, set the norm, it's good. Our main panel, display unit, norm, all of this is normal stuff, no indicators for our autopilot. We want to turn on main panel brightness, so our backlit lights will turn on usually to about 2 or 3 o'clock. I find in this plane I don't have to adjust any of the lower display unit brightness, the inboard or the outboard display units. They're basically at max, turned up to, was at about 5 o'clock, with the center ones at about 12 o'clock position, so they're fine. We do want the floods turned on to about 2 or 3 o'clock as well. So those are good. I don't have any weather information yet. I haven't collected that. Let me just scan my checklist to make sure I haven't skipped anything unintentionally. As we come down to do the captain's EFIS panel, which is kind of where we are right now, good idea to go ahead and get information, local information for the airport. Before I do that, so we've got some different features in the Zibo. Go back over here to the electronic flight bag. I'll get myself in position here a little better. We've got this AVI tab feature, which is a plugin for X-Plane that allows us to get information for the airport. Now this is kind of interesting because I can just select, I can search on an airport, KBOS, and we'll go ahead and enter that, and I can get my communications channels, my runway information. So this is pretty convenient. So I can get ATIS on 135.0. Handy. I don't really use it that much. I'm using more the Navigraph information, but I just wanted to show that feature. Get out of this. Get out of this. And we'll go over here to our radios. And we want to program in 135.0, which is already set up. So we'll just activate that and get some weather information.
Boston Logan INTL information Sierra. 2100 Zulu weather. Wind 230 at 10, visibility more than 10. Sky conditions 2800 scattered, 4800 broken, 16,000 broken, temperature 28, dew point 21. Altimeter 2991. Arriving runways 22 right, 22 left, 27, departing runways 22 right, 22 left. Advise on initial contact you have Sierra.
Alright, so we got our information. In short, we needed to get the altimeter setting, so we got 2991. We have information Sierra. The winds today out of 230 at 10 knots. Visibility 10 miles. First cloud decks 2,800 feet. Scattered. And then the important information to make sure it aligns with our flight plan, departing runways 22 right and 22 left, which I don't believe aligns with what our flight plan has set up for us. And it does not. Flight plan called for 4 right, so we'll be making an adjustment there, departing from 22 right or 22 left. So let me bring up Navigraph. Let me change my runway information. If I go over here to Navigraph, I had a different runway programmed in, so we want to use runway 22. Actually, I don't know yet. Let's go to Boston. Let's go ahead and open the chart list, look at the airport information, and we have visibility of where we are at the airport. So for us, from a perspective of traveling to the runway, it's going to be easiest for us to get on really either one. We'll be crossing here at the end of the runway, so we could do 22 right or 22 left. But to make this simple, we'll just go with 22 right. So 22 right is going to be our runway. Now we'll get rid of, and while we're here looking at this, let's look at 22 right is 7864 feet, 7864 feet, and 2397 meters. We'll need that information here in a little bit. And the heading of the runway, you look up, I don't know if you can see my mouse, 22 right here in the top of the screen, 215 degrees, so 215 degrees. We'll need that for our course heading. We'll get rid of this, go back and select 22 right, 22 right, and our departure is going to use Blizzard 4. That's not going to change, so that's fine. Now, yeah, we're just going to go with that for right now. Let's go back into the airplane. The other thing I wanted to do is, there is a disconnect in X-Plane and Active Sky. I don't know why this is. You would have think that this would have been worked out by now, but the weather information is just slightly different between Active Sky and X-Plane. So if we get our current weather info for the airport, so we'll get our closest weather, Active Sky actually has a radio frequency that you can tune into at 122.0. We'll listen to that here for a moment.
Kilo Bravo Oscar Sierra Airport Information Quebec 1954 Zulu weather wind 234 at 17 gusting to 20 visibility 10 sky condition 2800 scattered ceiling 3500 broken ceiling 6000 broken temperature 29 dew point 21 altimeter 2991 advice on initial contact. You have information Quebec.
So what you pick up right there is, we went from information Sierra to information Quebec. Right? There's a big disconnect there typically. The wind information is slightly different, 234 with 17 knot winds as opposed to 230 at 10 knot winds. Visibility was the same. Cloud deck was the same at 2,800 scattered. Temperature was close, but we went from current temperature of 28 to 29, and if we look at the console, our outside air temperature is 29 degrees. So in this case, Active Sky is more accurate. Dew point at 21, which matches what we got from X-Plane. And altimeter, fortunately, that's an important one, right? At least it matches up at 29 or 9 or 1, so we're good to go there. I tend to be a little more reliant on the Active Sky weather information, and that's probably what we use most of the flight until we get close to our destination, because we'll want to get the active runway. We'll try and predict what that's going to be, but we'll listen for the active runway when we get closer to our destination. All right, so we have that information. Where was I? Let me go back here to my checklist. Good to go. And I apologize, I'm not near as fast at this as if you watch some of the other YouTube videos with the actual real airline pilots. They do it day in and day out. I am not a pilot. I am a simmer. Proud to be a simmer, and trying to learn from their expertise and apply it to my own experience here in the airplane. So with the EFIS panel, I really don't do a whole lot with the EFIS panel at the start of my flights. Right up here with the EFIS panel, I don't typically set a whole lot up front. So we're going to skip that for the moment. I don't have anything I have to put in other than the altimeter, which we heard was, change this to inches of mercury, 29901. So quick little adjustment down here on our PFD. Did I miss my position indicator? Am I supposed to set that a little earlier? Maybe not. We'll come back to that. So from the EFIS panel to the MCP, we did get our course heading for the runway at 215. So if we look over here, specifically at the MCP panel, we want to set this for 215. We want to set the other side for 215. And we want our course setting to also be 215. Set, we're going to turn on flight director, so this is the master side, the captain side of the aircraft. And I know that our initial altitude is not going to be 34,000 feet, it's going to be 5,000, and you'll see that here in just a moment. So we're going to back the altitude down to 5,000. Okay, that's good. We don't have a speed yet, which is fine. Bank heading, for whatever reason in this aircraft, I don't know if you can see that, but the indicator is set for, what is that, 25? We're going to go to max, so we're just going to push that out to 30. That's what it is typically when I'm flying in FSX. I don't know if that's right, wrong, or indifferent, but that's what we're going to fly with. Autopilot disengage bar is up, which is what we expect. That's normal. Going back over here to clock, 2248. That is Zulu time. That looks fine. PFD, no indicators yet. I want to do this thing real quick. So I know I was supposed to set this. So we've activated our IRSs, and if we went back up and looked, we would see that we've got no status indication, and it's basically waiting on us. So it's initialized, it's waiting on us to give it its position. So if we go down here to the FMC, we'll go ahead and spot check our identification information. So the 737-800, nav data is current. We want to do our position initialization. In this aircraft, slight difference than what we're used to in FSX. So we need to set our IRS position. We're going to go to next page and grab our GPS data for our current position from the GPS left. Just clear this so you can see what's going on. I selected this left select button. It dropped the information in our scratch pad. We'll go back to our previous page and just plug that in. And no sooner do we do that than our primary flight display and our navigation display come to life. So now they are operational and we are ready to continue momentarily. Spot check the integrated standby flight display is right here. In this case, in this aircraft, I do have the altimeter connected to it as well as the first officer's altimeter setting, so I only need to set it in one place and it gets set across all three of these. Just convenience for being a simmer rather than trying to set it in all three places for every flight. That's something you can configure in the airplane configuration in the electronic flight bag. Center console here, let me just look up a little bit. So auto is correct. Fuel flow, we want to hit the reset, let that clear. That's good. We can go ahead and set our rejected takeoff for our auto brakes now. Check our speed brake lever. Speed brake lever is up. Engines, reversers are all in the correct position. Weather radar, something that we're able to actually control in FSX and the PMDG aircraft. None of these controls are modeled, right? I can't change. I think I said that. Yeah. Can't change any of these controls. I'm trying to manipulate them and none of them respond. So this is set for you by default. No adjustments can be applied here. We do want to check our rudder, make sure it's centered and zeroed. It is. Get our floodlight over the center pedestal turned on. Get our backlit lights turned on as well to just under 3 o'clock. Everything else is good. Radio controls. The volume knobs, now here, the volume knobs on this aircraft are actually modeled. They work, and they actually control the volume. The PMDG side and the FSX, they are not modeled. You have no control over the adjustment of the volume. It's just either on or off. So, hey, there's one up for the X-Plane mod from Zebo. Nice job. At this point, we'll come back to our transponder here in a moment. We want to get our FMC going, but before I start that, sound. I want to show you what we got going on with sound. This is something also we don't get with the FSX, at least not to this level. So from the electronic flight bag, we've got this start flight leg. This starts the sound for the entire journey of the flight, and there are triggers along the way that change what you actually hear. Love that. Really adds to the immersion. So at this point, doors open. We're ready to start boarding passengers. Cabin is comfortable, so we're going to start. And by doing that, passengers are going to start to board the plane, and you'll hear them clicking belts and loading baggage into the overhead bins as we continue with our startup. So we're going to go down to the FMC and continue. Now, one thing I don't like in this aircraft is I have to interact with these buttons, right? I've got to move a mouse around and click these buttons. I can't make my keyboard directly interact. So there is an add-on that allows me to get control of the FMC from a tablet. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Let me just go ahead and see if I can start it up. So if you can see here, here is the tablet, and it's got a picture of the FMC. So I'm going to actually interact with this tablet, and you'll see what I'm doing on screen as I program the information in for our flight today.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome aboard.
Now, listen to that.
If you have more than one carry-on item, please place the smaller item underneath in front of you. We'd like to be able to accommodate everyone's carry-on bags, so have to check in here at the last minute. So again, please place the in front of you. Good evening and welcome aboard.
I don't know if you could hear that. It was really kind of faint in my ear, but that was the flight attendants welcoming people aboard, telling them where to put their luggage. We just heard from the flight attendant that the Leo is on board, so a very common reference for law enforcement officer. So just cool immersion, you know, in flying the aircraft. So back to the FMC. We are at K-Boston, K-Boss. So you'll see as I type, it'll appear. I'm pointing to the screen. You can't see me point to the screen. It'll appear down here in a scratch pad as I type things in and plug them in. So with K-Boss, we're going to drop that up here into the reference airport. Excellent. And now we're going to move on to our route information. Notice that our K-Boss is still down here in the scratch pad. We're going to drop that in up here in our origin. We are going to Dallas-Fort Worth today, KDFW. flight number is going to be UN 2714. Next we'll go to departure arrivals. Today's departure from Boston is using runway 22 right. 22 right. We are using the standard instrument departure for Blizzard 4. No transition to select from. We'll go straight to route. Next page. Here's our SID. Here is our waypoint that we'll be departing the SID on, which is the Blizzard waypoint. From here we put in the rest of our flight plan. I'm just going to bring that up on the other screen. Alright, that makes the last waypoint for the flight plan. Now we need to go do our arrival. Arrival into Dallas-Fort Worth is tentatively, according to our flight plan, going to be runway 17 right. So ILS 17 right on the Seaver 4 star, our standard terminal arrival. And the last waypoint where we transition to the star is View. We'll select that. Looks good. Now we'll go to legs and we'll scan this for any vectors or discos that might exist. We'll scroll down the list. A little bit of a trek down to Dallas-Fort Worth from Boston. So we've got a lot of intermediate waypoints that have been dropped in for us. And here we do have a vector. So from this last waypoint, this Yabit, we want to go to Yalta. So we want to get rid of this vector. Drop that in up here. That gets rid of the vector. Now we're connected. Everything else looks good. This is our runway landing. So we're going to go ahead and activate this and execute it. So now our flight plan is good, and we'll continue on with the FMC programming. At this point, we want to go to our Init Reference. So we're not using, in this case, since the numbers on the aircraft, and we're going to trust that the aircraft information is accurate, we're not going to pull the zero fuel weight from the flight plan. Recall that we saw that on the electronic flight bag. All we have to do here is just click zero fuel weight. So 61.8 is what is in the electronic flight bag for our weight. That gets loaded automatically. Reserve fuel today comes from the flight plan, 4.2 metric tons. If you wanted to see that, so here on the flight plan, 4.2 comes from our alternate and our reserve fuel. You can do the quick math yourself there. It's going to come out to be 4.2. And that's what we're going to program in. For reserves. Cost index coming from the flight plan is 5. Cruising altitude today is 34,000 feet, or we enter that as 340. And we do have to execute this. Now this is something different that I don't have to do in FSX, and you don't want to miss this execute, because it won't set the cruise altitude. So you've got to click execute. Now, I want to put one more piece of information in. So I want to show you two things real quick before I click the execute, but we've got to remember to hit that. Back over to the flight plan, just visibility, right? Here's our flight steps, cruise altitude, 34,000 feet, and our cost index of 5 is where that information came from. You've seen that before, should be familiar with that. So that is good to go. Now I want to look at active sky. I don't know if I can show you that. Actually, I can. Let me just reposition that. Let's go back to main console here. I want to bring up the active sky weather, and I want to put in our flight plan into active sky real quick so we can load that up. So we're going from Boston to Dallas Fort Worth. We have to do this, right? This is a different way than what we're accustomed to in FSX. We're not using air traffic control in-game in X-Plane, but we want weather to be generated for us on our trip down to Dallas Fort Worth, so we give it the flight plan direct. And what I'm looking for here is our top of climb wind information. So top of climb wind direction is going to be 273, 34 knots. And we want to put that last piece of information into the FMC. I'm going to go back here. Yeah, 273 at 34. So 273 at 34. Now we've got everything we need. Nothing else. Transition altitude is 18,000 feet in the United States. That's no different. We have that information for this airport. Now we execute this. And because it's burnt me enough times, I go over to the cruise button and make sure that my cruising altitude is configured. This matters, and you want to make sure this is set. Looks good. Continue down our checklist here. We want to go back to our Init Reference. It's going to advance automatically. Oh, no, it didn't. Now we need to go to N1 limit. And we need to select what our derated takeoff, what our assumed temperature is going to be. I get this from the performance information for the aircraft. Not going to cover that in detail right now, but I've already calculated that to be, with dry runway, to be an assumed temperature of 46 degrees. If you want to know more about how I go about doing that, it was incredibly complicated when I first tried to figure out how to do it. But I've got a system now that is not too detailed, that anyone probably could work with to figure out what the assumed temperature is. So 46 degrees is what we're going with. That's going to give us a derated takeoff, 96% of the N1 capability of our engines. So that's what we need on this page. Now we'll go to takeoff information. Standard takeoff today using flaps 5. We'll recall our center of gravity from the electronic flight bag. At 18.5%, we are going to need trim of 6.25. Trim 6.25. And with all of that entered, we can see the information that we captured for our runway earlier, 22 right. We had indicated 7864. It's got 67 here, and 2397 or 2398 meters. So close enough. We need to activate our V1, our rotate, and our V2 speeds. And make note of those so we have that. 150. 155. And at this point, we can go back to legs, and we're ready to move on. The APU is already started and running, consuming our fuel. First officer, we just jump over to his side real quick, spot check his equipment as well. That's good. Really, the only thing we're going to have to do over here is get his light situated. Everything else is in position. We can do the ground proximity warning test.
Pull up. Wind shear. Wind shear. Wind shear. Terrain. Terrain. Pull up. Obstacle. Obstacle. Pull up. Airspeed low.
He typically goes up and looks at environmentals. So this is fine. We are getting a warning here. We're not worried about that right now because we have the engine bleeds active at the same time of the Apu bleeds. Not an issue because the engines are off at this point. Back down to his seat. What else do I have here? No changes on his EFIS panel because we already have the altimeter set. Course is set. His flight director switch does need to be turned on, so we'll activate that. Clock is good. FMA enunciations are clear, which is what we expect at this point. We do have our V1 indicated here on the speed tape, 150. Radio, go back to our MCP. We now know our V2 speed of 155. We want to drop that in up here for speed. Now, what I like to do at this point, and not everyone does this, is I have my flight management computer configured. I can go ahead and arm VNav and LNav right now. So we'll do that in advance. I won't activate or arm the auto throttle until we get to the runway. And we are ready to start disengaging from the jetway, calling for our taxi, getting authorization to start the engines, and this is where the sound immersion comes in. So all the passengers have been actively loading behind us. And the first thing we want to do is we're going to activate this seatbelt. And the flight attendants are going to make an announcement.
Call and ask somebody to take your seats for a little bit. So please make sure you're in your seat with your seatbelt securely fastened until he does turn that fasten seatbelt sign off and we get to do some things.
And we're just about getting ready to go. We are getting our approval for pushback and starting the engines. So another part of this immersion is planning our taxi. So this is a little better than it is in FSX. Let's look at ground services, better pushback. I'm trying to remember where I was, yes. So we want to pre-plan our pushback, and this is kind of cool. Let's get rid of this. So here we are at the gate, top of the airport. We can adjust the plane for the angle that we want for our pushback. We're going to put it right here where we need to be on the center line for the taxiway. So we just kind of put it in position, go ahead and select it. That's where they're going to push us back to when we call for the pushback. So our pre-planning is done. We're going to go ahead and accept that.
All right, Captain, got the directions. Let me know through the menu when you're ready.
And now they're waiting on us to basically tell them when to start pushing us back. The next thing we want to do before we advance from this point is part of the immersion. We have the ability to make our own PA announcements, so PA system, and we can give a little captain's welcome to the cabin.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, from the flight deck. Welcome aboard. They're going to be underway shortly for the first leg. These three wonderful flight attendants, give them your attention as we push the taxi. They're going to give you plenty of attention and ready. Enjoy the flight. We'll talk to you once you're aboard.
Tell me that's not cool. That's cool. I like it. And you can change the voice. It's got some voice options as well. Fun stuff. So we are just about ready to push back. We want to let the ground crew know we're going to start the engines, and as chance would have it, that's the indication to the flight crew to get everybody in their seats and ready to go. We are about to leave the gate, so we're going to turn our anti-collision light on.
Flight attendants prepare for departure, cross-check and all call, thank you.
All right, we've got everyone strapped in. Give us a ring if you need anything.
with that announcement, there it goes. The cockpit door is closed and secured. We are on board, and if you look back here, you can see that the cockpit door is actually closed. We are ready to request pushback. And just verify that. We actually do need to go and set our transponder, verify our exterior doors. So up here we can make sure that the cargo doors are closed, exterior doors are closed. They are. I'll go down and set our transponder. So today's code. And if you listen, you can hear the flight attendants talking.
If you have a condition that would prevent you from performing the functions listed on the card, let us know. We will be happy to receive you. Ladies and gentlemen, in order for us to push back from the gate, please check to make sure your seatbelts are...
I think that's awesome. I'm sorry. So cool. Alright, back to work here. Hello. There we go. 2, what are we doing here? 3, 1, that's good. 3, 1. 3176 today. We have transponder code. Go ahead and turn this to altitude off, but we'll activate our transponder. Everything looks like it's in good shape. So we'll go up, and we are ready. Go back from this. And request pushback.
Great news, Captain. Your tow's coming.
Now this tow that's going to come and push us back has got tremendous detail and does a really good job of pushing the plane back in comparison to what you experience with FSX, in my opinion. The downside is, again, ground services is a little bit weak. Not a little bit, it's a lot weak in X-Plane. Because this tow is going to come through the wall, and it's going to drive through the marshaller, and it's going to pull up to the front of the plane. And there's not much we can do about that. So if you look here, we'll zoom in. Right, typically the tow and FSX will be sitting over here and would pull forward and come to the front of the plane, but oh, there we come, right through the building, driving right through the marshaller, no problem. But good detail. Good detail. All right, does that count for something? Yeah, a little bit. There's actually animation that's taking place inside of this model. Don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it's impressive. And it's such...
Alright, looks like the doors and hatches are closed and we're ready to connect.
It's these little touches that if you don't notice them, obviously they'd be lost on you, but great quality. Look at the animation. Crazy. That's so good. So unnecessary. But kudos to whoever put that together. That's a lot of work, and that is awesome. Awesomely realistic. Well, I love it. Right, see the plane, the wheels being picked up off the ground onto the tug. Come on now, that's great!
Welcome aboard, Captain. Tow's connected, 5 past 10's inserted. Go ahead and kill the parking brake when you're ready to go.
Ready to go. Now, notice that the gate is disengaging automatically.
Here comes the pushback. Light them up.
The gate quality is terrible, but it moves and it adds to the realism. And now we've got work to do. You can hear the bell of the gate moving away from the aircraft. So we're going to start up the engines. We want to turn off our packs. We need that bleed power for the engines. And we want to start engine number 2. Hello. There we go. Go down here and monitor the startup of engine number 2. And you can't help but notice if you look at the FMC right now, using reserve fuel. So we're cutting into our fuel already because we've been sitting at the gate here for so long. Oh, we're up to 25. I'm not paying attention. 25 and 2. We need to put the fuel on. There we go. Get up to about 56%. Get the engine start switch, go back to auto. Good to go. And with that started up, we'll go ahead and put some bleed power on from engine number 2 to keep the air conditioning on in the cabin. So we'll turn that back on. This should be up to off. It is. Yes. Alright. Starting engine number 1. We're monitoring N2, waiting for it to reach 25. Looking pretty good. Go ahead and spot check our pushback. Notice, this is I talked about the heat from the engines. Notice the transition or the blurriness of the scenery behind the exhaust from the APU jet engine. Same with the engine 1 and engine 2 that are starting up. A level of detail that you don't see or experience inside of FSX. Just a nice touch. We're just about back in line, but here's an interesting thing. So this is the first time that this has happened to me. I have a plane from Global Traffic right in front of me. Now he's going to stop, which is great, and I guess maybe I should have checked if there was a plane coming, because honestly I'm not sure how we're going to get around one another. This presents a little bit of a problem for me, I think. So this is an interesting arrangement that in my my pre-testing here with X-Plane I have not encountered yet. I'm pretty sure this is my taxiway.
Just about done here. Go ahead and set your parking brake.
I certainly couldn't push back to this taxiway, and I'm not sure how I'm going to be able
we're
to
disconnecting
get
the
around.
tow. Give me just a moment.
Oh, I'm not sure what we're going to do about this. I don't think I can go back. I probably could arrange for a pushback. Let me see if I can get pushback further. Here is something new we're going to try on the fly for the first time. Let's just see what it does. I don't know that it's going to work, to be quite honest with you. Reconnect.
Hey, Captain, let me know where you want this thing.
Okay, so good. So I have a reconnect option because I have a plane in front of me. I really like that. I think that's good. So we have the option to go further back. So let's go further back to here and see if that will work. Yes. So let's accept that. We'll push back, and that way we can kind of get out. Oh, look, the plane got out of the way. I didn't even have to do that.
Welcome aboard, Captain. Toes connected, bypass pins inserted. Go ahead and kill the parking brake when you're ready to go.
So I didn't even have to do this. So global traffic, I had read that
Here comes the pushback.
the planes will get out of your way. But here we're just going to terminate
Just about
this.
done here. Go ahead and set your parking brake.
So we terminated the pushback. Plane's out of our way right now, and we're gonna press on. So
And we're disconnecting the tow. Give me just a moment.
unfortunately, from a realism standpoint, there's some effing magic taking place right there. Certainly not real world, but I get it. You know, that's what we got to deal with. So back to where we were, as if none of that had just transpired. Who knows if I'll even leave that in this video. Well, let's get ready to go. A pushback, tug is disconnecting, engines are started up. We'll just spot check that here real quick. So engines are good. With the engines running, we'll go ahead and bring those up to the top display unit. We'll take a look at our controls and just spot check those real quick. So check our ailerons left and right, check our elevator up and down, check our rudder controls. So all controls are responsive and operational. We're going to go ahead and disconnect the tug, wait for the hand signal. Go ahead and get our taxi lights turned on in preparation for our taxi. Everything else is good. Go ahead and put this logo light on. Go back down here and look out the window. Right, we're going to get a hand signal here from the left, I believe.
And we're disconnected. Signal and pin on the left. Take it easy and have a safe flight.
Oh, he's still pulling away. Should see him here in a moment. I'll spot check my list. We need to get our, there he goes. You can see him pulling away. We'll come back to him in just one quick moment. Let's go down and get stabilizer trim up to 625. We'll go back up top here and look at him. He's going to hop out and give us the all clear. Yep, there's the all clear. We're good to go. Alright, stabilizer trim. Let's go ahead and put our weather indication on. So, weather activated. We are ready to go to the gate, so we are heading to 28. Now, there's some new plugins that I have which try to make this easier, but I think honestly I'm just going to use Navigraph because I can go back to my airport display, see where I am. So what I'm looking at here, just to show you, you can see here on Navigraph, recall that we're going to 22 right, so we're just basically a straight shot down here. We probably could hop out one. We'll hop out, get on this B, and then make our way up to 22 right. So that's the plan right now. I'm going to monitor that from the side, and we are going to get on the way. So brake off. We're going to advance the engines and start getting our roll here. I do like in X-Plane the realism of the brakes on the plane. They're not as instantaneous as they are in FSX. So when you hit the plane in X-Plane, it's a much gradual slowdown. And in fact, in the X-Plane, the brake controls actually have two levels, right? You have normal braking, and then I guess you have extreme braking that you can apply from a control standpoint. So we've started our roll. We're going to go ahead and just test the brakes real quick, and do have some brakes, so that's good. Now we'll press on to the runway. One thing I need to do, very important, is the engines are now running. So as we're starting our roll, I'm going to jump up here. We need to turn the air conditioning pack back on, turn our Apu Bleed off, and I've made this mistake numerous times. Make sure we switch over to the airplane engine. So Do that here real quick. Go back down and make sure we're not running off the taxiway. Keep an eye on our speed. Ground speed is 16, so we're looking pretty good. Go back up here and turn the APU off. And before I do that, I like to spot check that I am actually pulling power from the engines. I am. That's good. No power coming from the APU, so safe to turn it off. We'll do that. Go back down here. We can also go out and take a look. It's sometimes more interesting to watch from outside the plane. A little harder for me to track my speed from outside the plane, but we want to try and keep it under 20 knots ground speed. And I want to jump out to the other taxiway here, so we'll probably do that at this coming intersection. So we're at 22 knots. I'm going to turn here just a little bit. Slow down. We're going to cut across here. The other thing, I'm drawing a lot of CPU processing power, and I've got an even better graphics card now controlling the flight simulator. The motion on the ground and from externally to the aircraft, watching the plane move and the other equipment move around the airport is better, much better than it was in FSX. It tended to be a little choppy at times. That was probably my fault in FSX because I was driving 4K resolution, or attempting to drive 4K resolution in my simming experience, which no doubt was dragging down my FPS. Alright, we're going to make our way out here to 22 right. Now this is a hold short line. We don't have ATC, and we do have active traffic. Now, I find this kind of interesting. We need to get out here and get on this runway. I don't have anybody coming in, but we've got a plane that's going to be on this taxiway here any moment. So we're going to go up here and we're going to cut onto this runway. Come on, let's go, baby. So hopefully he's going to hold short for us. We're going to press on up here and see if we can't get into place here before he gets in our way. Hopefully he's going to stop and move. We'll see how smart ground traffic is. Come on, buddy, you got to stop. You got to stop. I got right away here. It's chicken. Slow down there. Oh, he stopped. Look at that. He stopped, but that was too close. Not comfortable at all. So we got to stop right here. Hello. Let's come to stop. Come to stop. Set the parking brake. we got a couple things we need to get situated here before we take off. Down to a TCAS. So TARA is set. Need to go up top. Getting ready to take off. We're going to put our engines to continuous ignition. Everything else should be set to go. We need to change our position light to steady and strobe. Get the strobe active. We want to arm our auto throttle. And as I do that, there's a trigger mechanism for the flight attendant, so we're going to hit the wing light. And we just notified the flight attendants that we're cleared.
Been clear for departure. Enjoy the flight.
Hey, the cabin is secured. Have a good flight.
We get that little detail. You need to shut up. We get that little detail in the cockpit, which is a nice touch. Now we'll go back down and set our auto throttle. We'll get that engaged. We are just about ready to take off here. Request clearance for takeoff. We'll assume that we get that. Yep, should be fine. Go back out here. Now I want to... Let's go. Shit. Autopilot. Alright, well, we had an interesting start there, that's for sure. My first go at it, I didn't have my flaps out. I did not have my flaps out, and we had to jump off the runway, try again, and then it didn't look like I had enough speed going down the runway. We slammed on the brakes, aborted the takeoff, and basically blew out the tires because I held the brakes for too long. But there, as it turns out, that was a shorter runway than I was expecting, and we had just enough runway to get down and get up into the air. So we are airborne right now out of Boston, climbing to our initial altitude of 5,000 feet. Everything was pretty smooth for that takeoff. Gear up. We have already gone back to flaps retracted. All good. We're going to turn off the projected takeoff. Autopilot is currently engaged. Auto throttle's engaged. So now we are following our flight plan. So things are looking pretty good. And we're getting ready to make another bank turn here. So we've got heading to course is going to be adjusting here a little bit. We'll just kind of get it relatively close to where we are. Do that. $5,000. Engines are backing off. We're at our altitude. We have our landing gear is up and retracted, so we'll go ahead and move the arm into the off position. And look down here. Tires are good, so we can go ahead and turn that off as well. We've got our taxi lights we can turn off. We're airborne. Gears are retracted. We don't need that out anymore. Our wing light on. I'll leave the landing lights on until 10,000 feet. Everything appears to be good up top. No cautions. Do a quick recall. Go over here to Navigraph and see where we are in the world. We'll jump over to Navigraph here for a minute. You can see we just left out of Boston, runway 22 right, hung a left turn, going out over the water and then doubling back on our standard instrument departure, currently at 5,000 feet, heading towards this blizzard waypoint. According to the SID, leaving for 22 right, so we are tracking along just fine. It says basically continue on the depicted route to blizzard, top altitude 5,000 feet, maintain 5,000 or lower assigned altitude and expected clearance within 10 minutes, and it's about 7 minutes into this departure, so we're going to go with ATC has given us clearance to continue our climb. So we're going to go back into the sim, go ahead and adjust our MCP altitude setting. We'll go ahead and take it all the way up to 34,000. We need to zoom in here a little bit just so we can hit this altitude intervene. We'll click that and start our climb to our cruise altitude. Looks like we're going to have some weather we might be flying into. We'll see here in a moment. Go back into the cockpit. Turn on our weather radar, which should have already been on. Zoom out here a little bit. Go ahead and turn off our VORs. And you can see outside the other traffic. I really do like what the global traffic adds into the sim. So now you're flying with other aircraft constantly around you. You can see the labels are actually quite informative. What are they doing? Are they on approach? Are they cruising? What airline is it? And if we were to get up close to one of these aircraft, you would see that the livery on the side of the plane obviously matches with the label. Really cool. Not much to see back behind us right now, unfortunately, with the cloud cover. Continue our climb up to 34,000 feet. Back and take a look at my checklist. So we are climbing up through 9,000 feet. At the transition altitude of 18,000 feet, we'll change our altimeter setting to standard. So 10,000 feet, we can go up and turn off our landing lights. Everything else looks pretty good. Pressurization looks good.
Stay in the all position until we land in Los Angeles. Also, folks, while that seatbelt sign is on, you must remain in your seat with your seatbelt securely fastened until the captain feels it's safe and turns it off.
So I do like the immersion factor of the announcements in the cabin. However, some of the pre-recorded messages are customized for specific airlines and destinations. And while you have some ability to change those, sometimes you get something unexpected. That announcement, I don't know if you caught that, it kind of suggested we were heading to LA. We are not. We are heading to Dallas, Fort Worth. So this is the easy part of the flight. We'll continue our climb, monitor our instruments, basically track along with our flight plan. We've got a little bit of ways to go before we reach Dallas, Fort Worth. We do have a warning on the FMC indicating that we're using our reserve fuel, so we can kind of see how much we're going into it by going to progress here. I'm going to go ahead and clear the message. Go into progress. Recall we had reserves of 4.2, and it says by time we get here to Dallas Fort Worth, which is 1,300 nautical miles away, we're going to be down to 4.1 metric tons. I have a feeling once we get up to cruise altitude, we're going to pick up some time, not burn quite as much fuel, and we should be back within our tolerance. So not too concerned about that. 4 metric tons should be plenty of reserve fuel in case we run into any problems. Time to our top of climb, which is cruising altitude 34,000, 96 nautical miles to go until we reach there. It gives us a little time indication here, 23:14. We should arrive at our top of climb. So about 14 minutes longer before we're there. Climbing up through 14,000 feet. So that's it. This is going to be the slow part of the trip. I'm going to continue this flight on to Dallas-Fort Worth. We're going to come back as we get closer to Dallas-Fort Worth to set up for our descent and our landing. Now, we have pre-programmed in the assigned runway from our flight plan and sim brief. I believe that was 17 right, but once we get closer, we'll go ahead and get the weather from the airport and see what the active runways are. We'll try and predict that before we get that close to the airport, so we're not trying to navigate, you know, completely around the airport trying to line up for another runway. So we'll get the wind report as we get closer, try and predetermine which runways we think will be active, and we will set up for that, hopefully in plenty of time so we're not rushed for our descent, because inevitably when I start to rush for my landing, stuff goes wrong constantly. Everything's looking good. Approaching, we're going through 16,000 feet. Alright, so we're approaching 18,000 feet. One last little item of business. We're going to go ahead and go up here to EFIS panel and change our altimeter setting to standard. You see that down here in the primary flight display. So at this point, we are, let's take a look at where we are on the Navigraph map. So we go back out. You can see that we are still on our SID out of Boston, approaching our transition waypoint of Blizzard before we continue on our trek down to Dallas. So we've got just a little bit of ways to go. Zoom out here and give you a picture of that. So yeah, just a little ways. We'll continue our climb up to our cruising altitude of 34,000 feet. All right, well, we're going to continue our climb up to cruising altitude of 34,000 feet. We just went beyond 27,000 feet. On our way to Dallas-Fort Worth. Come back and catch the tail end of this video for our descent and arrival into Dallas-Fort Worth. We'll get the plane set up and we will configure for landing. Hopefully that goes smoothly, but you won't know unless you come back and watch the video. If you like this video, please, by all means, click that thumbs up button. I do appreciate it. And if you want to see more of these, click that subscribe button, come back. I plan to pick up posting, especially working with this new X-Plane 11, which I am completely digging. I mean, I've had some total moments of like giddiness, you can believe that, playing this thing. So it's definitely a little bit of a step up from FSX. I'm excited to be on this platform and trying out all these new features. And you got to come back and check out some of my new flights. So again, thank you very much. I'm Liam Locke. This is Aircraft Adventures, and we will see you for the descent into Dallas-Fort Worth. See ya.